What's up, everyone? It's been a while since I put out a video, and with the vaccine passport coming to Ontario and the justifications that are being used in order to mandate the vaccine passport, I think it's important that people see a different narrative than what is being put out in the popular media. And I don't put this video out there to try and change any person's opinion. I just think if you're an individual who wants to form the most reasonable opinion possible on the situation so that you can take the proper individual actions, you need to be as informed as possible. And people just simply are not getting the full spectrum of information. So we're going to look at a lot of studies from Israel today. And the reason why that's important is because Israel is much further ahead than North America as far as percentage of population that is vaccinated, as well as the duration which that higher percentage of the population has been vaccinated. Now, of course, it's a different part of the world. There's different geographic and demographic implications that come with that. So I'm not saying that whatever happens in Israel is going to happen here, but Israel is still full of human beings and the virus is still the virus. So you should at least consider the possibility that what is happening in other parts of the world is what is going to happen here. So this first study that we look at, and this is probably the most popular one that's emerging out of there, not just because of the extremity of the conclusions, but also that this was done using the MHS database in Israel, which means it used 26% of the entire Israeli population to come to this conclusion, which is a massive amount of the population for a study like this. Now, excuse me, without going through all the details of the study, you can do that on your own, just looking at the title and the lead author. I'll show you the highlights. So SARS-CoV-2 naive vaccinees had a 13-fold increased risk for breakthrough infection with the Delta variant compared to those previously infected. So that means if you incurred natural infection before vaccination, or maybe I'll say this the other way. So if you had never been infected with COVID-19 and then became vaccinated versus being previously infected with COVID-19 and then vaccinated, you had a 13-fold increased risk for breakthrough infections. And then when you look at the tail end of the study, and this is both from different dates, a different time span, and a few different measurements, SARS-CoV-2 naive vaccinees had a 6-fold increased risk for breakthrough infection and a 7-fold increased risk for symptomatic disease. So what this is saying is that natural infection gives much greater strength of immune response and resiliency. And we see this both with and without the vaccine. So if you have if you incur natural immunity from infection, your response is very strong, it is resilient, and has a high duration. If you have natural infection and then put the vaccine on top, that response is even stronger. If you only get the vaccine, then the strength initially of the immune response is very, very high, but it dwindles rapidly. And we'll talk about what that means for spread as well. But right now, just talking about breakthrough infection and disease severity, it is clear that natural infection gives much stronger protection across the board than the vaccination, and studies suggest that natural infection plus one vaccination maximizes that protection, at least in the way that it is measured medically. There's some there's some differences in that when it comes to the practicality and what people see anecdotally, but I don't think we can try and pick that apart with what we're doing right now. So here's another large study out of Israel. And what you see in this top graph here, the black and white one, is left to right, that's the timeline since vaccination. And top to bottom is the immune response using IgG as the antibody measurement for immune response from the vaccine. And you'll see that between 30 and 60 days, there is a huge drop-off in the immune response and the duration and sustainability of the initial immune response, both in under 60 and over 60. So between 30 and 60 days, you see a drop in immune response on average of 30 to 50%, which isn't great. And if you look at the chart below with all those colored lines on there, so this is from natural infection from within 1 month, 1 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, and 6 months plus. That's what those 4 quadrants are there, left to right. And the blue line is IgG measurement. And you will see that from natural infection, past 6 months, there is no drop in the measurement of IgG in the blood of those who were naturally infected, which again is just speaking to natural infection being much stronger and more durable as far as protection and response than the vaccine. And I don't say any of this to imply that everyone should go out and just try and get sick and no one should take the vaccine. But it does open up the question of, should we have been and should we start now targeting vaccination for the elderly, vulnerable demographics, the metabolically ill, those who have certain disorders that leave them more open to serious infection, rather than just trying to vaccinate every human being on the face of the planet? I think it's a question worth asking. And then the last study here, there's lots in this study, but the part that was interesting to me, just because it takes a little bit of a different angle than all the other studies that have been showing the strength of natural infection versus the vaccine. Spike-specific IgG memory B cells persist, this is in natural infection, which bodes well for a rapid antibody response upon virus re-exposure or vaccination. So what they're saying there is that when a person is naturally infected, their chances of having a very strong response and recovery upon reinfection is much higher than it would be from the vaccine. So they're saying if you're naturally infected and, after a year, your natural immunity wanes, upon re-exposure to the virus, you're going to have a very strong response from your body in order to combat the virus upon re-exposure. Or if you're naturally infected and then you get the vaccine, you'll have a stronger response to the vaccine due to your naturally occurring infection. So this is the question. If natural infection over and over and over and over again shows a stronger response than the vaccine, why are antibody tests not free, and why are antibody tests not able to be used in place of vaccination as far as a passport system if what we care about is resilience and health and safety of the population? And it doesn't end there. It appears that those who have been vaccinated versus those who have been naturally infected are actually spreading, or actually, I shouldn't say that. Let's just leave it at this. Those who have been vaccinated are still spreading COVID-19 in a significant way. So this is a small study. So this can't necessarily be extrapolated into larger populations. More studies will have to be done. But the conclusion of the study from the Lancet is very interesting. So patients deemed to have a breakthrough SARS-CoV-2 infection, i.e. the 54 patients who were fully vaccinated, were evaluated for illness severity. Among this cohort, we found that 46% of patients were asymptomatic, bracket, admitted to hospital for a non-COVID-19 related diagnosis, but with an incidental positive PCR test for SARS-CoV-2. What they're saying here is that people who are being admitted to the hospital for reasons that have nothing to do with COVID-19 are testing positive for COVID-19 in large numbers in the vaccinated demographic. Now, this is a bit of a theory here, but a theory that is very plausible. And this is something I brought up in in the last video that I did on Instagram here, is that if we know that the vaccine is very effective at reducing disease severity, we are going to have more vaccinated individuals who are asymptomatic. Therefore, we are going to have more vaccinated individuals who are carrying and spreading COVID-19 and not knowing it because they're not in the hospital, they're not in the doctor's office, they're not going to testing sites. Because if you're not having symptoms, if you're not getting significantly ill, why would you be in the places where they pick up that you're carrying COVID-19? So now we also have these strategies in Canada and Ontario that if you're vaccinated and you're exposed to someone who is positive for COVID-19, you don't have to isolate. Your family members don't have to self-isolate. As long as you are asymptomatic, there's really no steps that you need to take in order to stay away from the rest of the community. Even though it's fairly clear that there's at least a chance, a strong chance, I would say, that people who are vaccinated are still carrying and spreading the disease equal to the rate of those people who are unvaccinated. And now we're just giving everyone a pass who's vaccinated to just go out and be in the community and do whatever you want. And this will continue even if you've been traced and exposed to someone who is COVID positive. And when you look at the numbers, this pie chart here is the Ontario numbers. As of today, the vaccinated are making up almost 40% of current Ontario cases that are documented. Now, keep in mind, the study above is showing that people are showing up in hospitals, vaccinated people are showing up in hospitals for reasons that have nothing to do with COVID-19. And almost half of them, almost half of the COVID-19 positive cases that they're finding in this study are in vaccinated people who had no idea that they were carrying the disease. So even though it says, even though as of today's stats in Ontario, the vaccinated are making up almost 40% of current Ontario cases, that number's probably even higher. But since vaccinated people are less likely to be sick, less likely to be symptomatic, which are all good things. I'm not saying these are bad things. These are all good things. It's good that when you take the vaccine, it reduces disease severity and death. And I think that's all crystal clear. But you're not reducing the spread of the disease. So when you look at these things in combination, that natural infection offers strong protection, better than the vaccine in both efficacy and duration, and that it seems pretty clear that vaccinated people are not less likely to carry and spread the disease, they're just less likely to know about it. What is the value of a vaccine passport? And why are we not allowing people to have free antibody testing to see if they have naturally occurring immunity to the disease, if what we care about is protection and health of the community and preventing the spread? I think it's a pretty good question to ask. I think it's reasonable, and it's grounded in science. And the fact that people in public health and government are not willing to even acknowledge this just shows how anti-science public health has become. This is a political campaign. This is what is happening right now, is that the effect of lockdowns and all of these other actions that have been taken, the destruction of psychological and emotional health, the destruction of small businesses, the absolute destruction of our economy, which is coming down the pipe, damage we won't see for a couple of years, but 100% is coming, the devastation to the economy. The government of Ontario and the government of Canada and governments around the world, they have to show that what they did was the right thing to do. So they're not going to relent and say, hey, maybe we went about this the wrong way, or maybe we're going about it the wrong way right now. Let's re-strategize here and let's change things up. No, they have to stick to their guns now. And until enough people get naturally infected and enough people get vaccine plus booster plus booster plus booster that there's just no symptomatic people anymore, when that day comes in, they can say, see, it was all justified. We're where we are today in overcoming this disease because of all of our lockdown efforts and our vaccine passport and our relentless commitment to vaccine distribution. It's because of us and those decisions that we're where we're at right now. So all of the destruction and the chaos and the problems that we created with our strategy are justified. They're trying to say that the end will justify the means. So it doesn't matter if it takes another year, 2 years, 3 years. They're not going to change course until they find the result that they want. And then they are going to attribute that to all the shitty decisions that they made. That is what's going to happen. Now, shifting gears a little bit, talking about kids, because we're going back to school, or kids are back in school now, and it's all about protect the kids, social distancing, mask wearing, trying to reduce the accepted age of vaccination through regulatory bodies so we can vaccinate more kids and keep them safe. Well, here's the thing. As of yesterday, and these are from public health stats for both Ontario and Canada, the case fatality rate of COVID-19 right now in 0 to 9 is 0%. The case fatality rate from 10 to 19 is 0%. And of course, that doesn't mean that no one has died from 0 to 9 and no one has died from 10 to 19. It means it's such a minuscule amount compared to the cases in those demographics that it's not even readable. Just to give you an idea, in the 2018-2019 influenza season, the case fatality rate for adults was 0.45 and for kids was 0.73. So under 20 with influenza, the case fatality rate, and this is mostly in 0 to 4-year-olds, by the way, the case fatality rate is 0.73, where with COVID-19, and that's just over 1 year, one calendar year, 2018 to 2019, for COVID-19, these statistics are over 20 months. And we're still at a 0% case fatality rate. So all this nonsense about protecting kids, I'm so sick of hearing it. If there is anything that is crystal clear in all the data across the board, not just here but worldwide, is that kids are incredibly resilient to this disease, regardless of the variants and the scare tactics that we've used. And this is kind of where things have gone, right? First, it was about deaths. Then deaths were not significant outside of elderly and vulnerable populations. So then it was all about cases. Now it's about cases. And then when people started to say, well, what do cases matter if people aren't getting sick and dying? Then it became all about hospitalizations. Well, cases don't matter anymore. Now it's about hospitalizations. And they're just constantly shifting the goalposts in order to have things move in the direction they want it to move. And the last slide that I put here is just to remind everybody, like, I'm not some insane person who right off the hop was like, the government is bad, everyone's evil, this is all some giant plan to dominate the citizens of the world. Number one, I was talking about disease outbreaks being a massive problem for future generations, and I have a post here of proof, November 29th, 2019, when I was talking about the importance of the immune system because antimicrobial resistance is on the rise and disease spread is going to get worse across the world as population density grows. So I was on the ball as far as those things go. And these, what you see here is just a series of tweets where I was telling people right from the beginning of this pandemic, now's not the time to talk about health and fitness interventions. Now's not the time to talk about supplementation. We need to worry about public health solutions that can be put in place rapidly because they're accessible to all people. People around the world, and if you think about worldwide statistics of overweight and obesity, you're not going to change that in a matter of months. So I was very vocal on social media about let public health do their job And we can talk about health and fitness down the line when this isn't such an acute issue. And I was highly critical of people who are saying, just take vitamin D and you'll be fine. Just lose weight and you'll be fine. Just eat healthier and you'll be fine. So that's not how this works. This is a worldwide pandemic. Those solutions are not going to be helpful right now. But now it's been almost 2 years. And now it's dramatically clear to me, and it should be dramatically clear to you, that the only real long-term solution to this problem is creating resiliency inside of your own body in whatever capacity you can, which is like start by walking, stop eating sugar, don't drink so much, go to bed a little bit earlier. These are things that hopefully people started doing a long time ago. But if you haven't figured out by now that doing these things and taking ownership and responsibility for your health are going to be critical for combating, like this is going to be the last pandemic we see. Let's be honest. Chances are we're going to see more to come. And I hate to say it, but I think we're going to see worse ones in the future in our lifetimes. So get your shit together and start taking care of yourself right now. But the only reason why I put the slide at the bottom is because I said get out of the way, let public health do their job, let the professionals get in there and take care of these situations, let people who have been here before and understand this landscape do the job that needs to be done. But now, over time, this has turned into a completely different animal where now public health is politics. It's not health anymore. People who work for the government and within government in the health spectrum are not about health. They are about pushing forward the status quo for whatever the political agenda is, which right now is, hey, we made this decision. We destroyed the economy. We're killing small businesses. We have all of these mental and physical health ramifications of the things that we put in place and what we've done to our communities. So we just have to toe the line here, keep pushing forward, and make sure that no matter what happens, we can go back and say all those things we did worked, and this is the final result. And it's because of what we did, not in spite of those things we did. And now public health officials are just the mouthpiece for that message, which is clear, which is why I've been so adamant about speaking up, because people say things like, leave it to the experts. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. The average person has no business talking about research and blah, blah, blah. If there aren't people out there pushing back against the narrative, you do not force people in government and public health to make the best decisions possible. There has to be pushback. There has to be another side of the argument. There has to be a conversation that goes against the status quo in order to get to the best solution. And if what you care about is you, your family, your community, global health, people all over the world, and minimizing the damage of what is going on right now, then you have to be willing to push back against the media and government and public health narrative, if only to force them to think hard about what they're doing and understand that there's going to be consequences if they don't take this seriously and if they don't acknowledge all this data that's coming through. Because you don't really hear about this stuff, but the data is crystal clear and it is mounting. And like, I'm just showing 3 or 4 studies here. There's at least 20. There's at least 20 that I've read in varying strength and in varying population sizes, but put together collectively, I'd say it's pretty clear where these things are trending, and we just refuse to acknowledge it in Ontario and in Canada. Nope, put our fingers in our ears, blah, 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 and we're just going to attempt to vaccinate ourselves out of this problem. And it's going to be boosters every 2 to 3 months over and over and over and over again until there's enough time vaccinated and enough people naturally infected and incurring that immunity that disease severity, death, symptoms drop, which is a good thing. But then the government's going to say it's because of all these decisions we made. It's because we locked down the community. It's because we shut down small business. All those people that went bankrupt, that's what we had to do. But look at the result. We've destroyed the disease. You wait. That is what you will see. But I'll get off my soapbox here. That wasn't really the point of me doing this video, but it's inevitably how it ends up. So I hope everyone has a great day and a great week. If you want to comment on the video, if you want to push back a little bit, if you have an alternative point of view, as long as you're a reasonable human being and you use evidence to back up your opinion, I welcome the debate.